just for a little bit of background for me, I work at Hope Academy. I'm a kindergarten teacher this year. I've actually been at Hope Academy since it started in 2000. I was one of the 3 teachers that started at the school as a kindergarten teacher. I've done lots of things at Hope Academy, so I haven't taught kindergarten that whole time. But anyway, I was saying to Daryl was asking me how I heard about Hope Academy, and I had just seen on a bulletin board a job posting for a classical Christian teacher, and I had been in classical Christian education for about 8 years at that point, and was looking for a teaching job and saw that and had no idea it was urban, and just called and interviewed and then realized that this is urban. And I thought, well, I've never done anything like that before in my entire life, and I think I remember asking Russ, do you think it will really work? To bring this classical Christian piece into the inner city just seemed like something I wasn't sure what that would really look like. And so I decided, when I accepted the job, I thought, well, okay, I'll take the job, and I'm just going to do what I've always done and pray it'll work, because I really didn't know what to do. And the fantastic thing was seeing that when I did what I had always done in my classroom, that these kids responded in the same way. They responded with the same delight, the same wonder, the same richness. Some of the best conversations that I've ever had have been with these urban kids. Some of the most insightful words have come from these kids. So I realized right away that my attitude coming into the school was shortchanging them, in me thinking, oh, will this work? And that was my fault in not really realizing their capabilities as learners and as children. And so that was a growing experience for me, just to be with that, and I learned from them every day, and I learned from our families every day, and I'm a better person because I know them, and I have faces to what we sort of call a problem of at-risk youth. I have all of these beautiful faces for that. So that's really a gift. But one of the things that I love to bring to the Hope Academy classroom is a love of beauty. I feel like that is something, if you can bring that to these children, it opens this doorway to so many other things. And there's an absence of exposure to beauty from these kids in a way that is different from those in maybe other homes or healthier homes. In multiple ways, both just even the physically beautiful things, whether it's a man-created physically beautiful thing, or more importantly, a God-created physically beautiful thing. Nature is something that is generally outside of the city, and I think Minneapolis is one of the greenest cities, I think, that I've ever been in. So the kids there do have some experience with nature, but generally speaking, I think God He's commanded us in the Bible that we will know Him by His creation, and so we're asked to look at it, and they have this void where they're not outside their doors. Lots of times their parents are working long hours. They're not able to take them out, and they live in an apartment. They don't have a backyard, or they aren't able or safe to go outside to play, and so they spend their life indoors. Oftentimes, maybe they're unsupervised and watching television. And so with that, the other thing that I've noticed with them, and this is just generally true, is that they don't know how to converse or have a conversation because that's not their experience. And so my goal as a kindergarten teacher is to welcome them in such a way where I can show them beauty, I can show them what is good and lovely, and I can also help them by learning to share their thoughts and ideas and listen to others and really see the experience of having this great conversation about idea, and that it's a worthy thing to be talking about different ideas, which, in kindergarten, it amazes me how much they're ready for some of the deepest ideas. When we were we do a winter school unit each year where we're rotating through some periods of history. And a year ago, we were doing one on westward expansion, and part of it involves like a school-wide, what you call it, like an activity. And this one was where we were all classrooms were part of a wagon train, and we were given slips each day. They could go get them to find out kind of the plan for our day for our wagon train, like what we encountered. Sometimes it might be something great. Sometimes lots of times we had to make a decision because something was going to happen. Well, they weren't always easy ones, and we ran into this one where one day we had to choose between this rocky path that went up this ravine, and we talked about that. They're like, oh, you could fall off, and all this. We shouldn't go that way. And this other way, they didn't have water. We need water to drink. And so then we got into this whole conversation about how do you make a good decision when you're faced with not such a great option and not such a great option. It's easy when there's a clear right and a clear wrong. Here we were going, what should we do? Both are really important. And so for them to kind of walk through and navigate that idea and think about, well, how do I decide that? Because in their lives, a lot of times the decisions they're making are very complicated. And so we want to be able to give them words and things that they can use to help them make those decisions. So I try to bring beauty in a couple of ways. One is a physical way. So I was able to choose and even just paint my own classroom and have the colors that I feel like would bring, what a bit of, I used blues and greens and tried to bring nature in from outside. We're given permission to do things like bring in extra lighting, better lighting, or even diffusers for essential oils, for, just for the whole environment. And how we organize, what we put on the walls, because in classical education, the understanding is there is a transcendent idea. There is a virtue. There is something that is underlying and weaving through everything, and we want to see that in example in everything we do. Because with them, one of the things that is such a helpful tool, I think, is when they can look at the whole of something and see it for its parts. Because that's how we see God, is we see nature, we see kind of this broad view, but if we can take all of this apart, then we can see all of these things that are weaving through that make this big, beautiful thing. And so helping them to be able to take something and just spend time looking at it and asking them what they notice and what they see and what that must mean and how that works. And so I do that with art and with some other things as well, where it also is very informative. One of the activities I did with them was I took a picture of an airplane, and it was in a center, and just put a big bin of Legos in the center. Each got a picture of an airplane, and I said, I want you to build it. Really interesting what kids have and have not had experience with constructive toys, and their ability to actually look at an object and start to take it apart in their mind and see the shapes that make it up, to see what they need, how they could do that then with these smaller pieces. So they have to take that apart in their mind, and then they have to put it back together in the Legos. And it was really interesting to see those kids that were able to do that, and those that really, by the end of the center, they had one Lego block just sitting on top of the picture, and they had no idea how to do that. And so trying to help them see those things in a variety of ways, and what I do is something I feel like is helpful for them to then think about idea. Because one of the things when we're teaching, we value understanding by design, Grant Wiggins, the backwards planning. How many of you guys have used backwards planning? A couple of you. I love the backwards planning, because what the backwards planning did for me when I started using it 5 or 6 years ago was it helped me to take something that I thought I knew and really actually know it by looking at it and asking questions. So one of the things that I did, I knew I was going to be teaching the story of Red Riding Hood, which you're all familiar with, and we do a bit of fable and folk tales and that. And so I thought, well, okay, I'm going to take this story, because I think I know what the story's about, and yes, we should obey our mothers. And so I took it and I went through the process of brainstorming and sorting into, what are big ideas, which are things that are, you will find a big idea, you can have the same big idea in math that you can in English, that you can in science. So they're really what they come down to are virtues. Now, the understanding by design curriculum is it's not a Christian curriculum, but that's what they're looking for. It's wisdom and patience and kindness. They're usually one word. Then with that, you can break that down into, if you think of those big ideas, usually what comes to me first are essential questions, which are questions that you ask to try to get toward that big idea. So what do I have to ask to help them see that this story is about this? What is the question I need to ask? And there are enduring understandings too, which are more specific to the stories. But anyway, so what I found was, when I was doing Red Riding Hood, was this story that I thought I knew. I found out, my goodness, I really didn't know this story at all. Because what I thought was really about obeying your mom, then after studying it, I thought, well, I'm not so sure it is. I think it's about who you trust. I think the story is about, and also that was one of the big ideas, was about trust. Who do you trust and why do you trust them? And there were so many deeper ideas in the story about even like where did Red Riding Hood first go wrong? And most of the kids will say, oh, she was talking to the wolf, and her mom told her not to. But that wasn't where she first went wrong. She first went wrong when she decided to stop to talk to him, right? Because her mom had said not to and to keep going. So it's when she stopped, not when she talked. So getting them to understand the idea that the things we do wrong come from something inside of you first. And then moving on from that, we moved into this idea of how when the wolf, so cleverly and beautifully says, Red Riding Hood, why don't you look about you on this fine day? I don't even think you hear the birds sing. That's what he says to her. And then, of course, she divulges where she's going and that her grandmother is sick. And, the wolf says to her, why don't you pick flowers for your mom? Which, right then, it's such a great focal point, because picking flowers for someone who's sick is a good thing. But when I ask the kids, should she pick flowers, they say no. So then we have this big discussion about why shouldn't she pick flowers? Because picking flowers are good things. Don't you like flowers? Have you given your mom flowers? Well, why wouldn't you want to give her flowers? And they wrestle around for a while, and then they say, well, because her mom said she shouldn't stop, she shouldn't loiter, which is we use an old version, and they still use loiter. They accuse each other of loitering. But anyway, so she said you shouldn't stop. And so then we talk about the idea that the worst lies are the ones that are closest to the truth, right? It's because you want them to be able to tell the cunningness of Satan's lies. So we work through that whole idea, and then as we're going through, I'm realizing this story, it's a parallel. It's a parallel to the fall of man and Christ, right? I mean, you see the whole thing happen where in the garden with mom and her saying, you shouldn't do this, then she does it, and the wolf is the tempter, he's the serpent, and we talk about sin and how your sin impacts others around you. Grandmother gets swallowed, and grandmother didn't do anything wrong, right? And so we talk just about the impact, and she loved her grandmother. Did she want her grandmother to be swallowed? Well, no, she didn't want her to be swallowed, but this is what, the impacts of what we do affect other people. But then there's the woodman who comes, right? And who saves them, and we talk about how he stops and he's just on his way to work. That would make him late to work, right? To stop and to find out why there was snoring in the house where there usually wasn't. And it doesn't even say that he really knew Grandma. So as we work our way through, it takes us about 6 weeks to go through Red Riding Hood, which it's really interesting because 2 years ago when I do a parallel with an art project, because we also were doing imitation, and in teaching classically, in teaching art, what you really want to make sure is you give the tools to them to understand the imitation of the masters, the imitation of why things work. And so they learn line, shape, value, texture, color, form, space, and how to use them. And in that project, we learn this whole thing about how on a flat piece of paper can you make it look like it's deep and something is close and something is farther away. So we're talking about how you drop things on a page. We're talking about how closer things are bigger. We're talking about how you cover part of an object. If you see part of an object, you know your brain is going to think it's behind it. So we're learning all of these things while we're reading Red Riding Hood, because we're doing a project with Red Riding Hood going through the woods. And he said at the end of the unit when I said, so tell me what you learned about all this that we did. We were looking and we look at each other's artwork and we talk about it, and what were they able to do that really convinced you in the art that this was closer, this was farther away, or anyway. So we're talking about it, and one of my students raises his hand and said, well, Mrs. Harris, I've learned that art is complicated, and Red Riding Hood is complicated. This is so funny. But anyway, it's interesting because that book is one that's it's old. It doesn't I don't show them any pictures. It doesn't really have any pictures, and that's the book that they will come to me and say, "Can we read a story out of that book?" Even after we spent 6 weeks having dialogue as 5 and 6-year-olds about this kind of story. So that helps me see this beauty of classical education that loves not only the grammar of a subject, but the logic. They're ready for it. They're asking the questions, and all of that rhetoric, that presentation, that piece together. The other piece that I value a lot with the story, and then I want to get your guys' thoughts and questions too, is I had a class 3 years ago that I thought was going to do me in. After all my years of teaching, it was really a challenge. And one of the things that this class struggled with, they struggled with literally everything. You know how you get classes and you'll have different things that are an issue or pop up? Well, this was like across the board. I mean, it was lying and cheating and stealing and lewd behavior and swearing and you name it, and it was rampant. And so, trying to figure out how to tackle this, I was thinking about Christ and how Christ's classroom, I would never want his classroom. I mean, if you think about it, Pharisees all the way down to completely untrained, uneducated people, and he was teaching toward a class that was not even seen, right? All of us. Everybody who was coming after, that all of this was going to be speaking toward. So he's speaking to everybody. But what he chooses to do is use what? Stories, right? Because story, what I found with this really tough class that this was reminded to me, is that you can't teach the mind in the same way you teach the heart. It doesn't work that way. Story teaches the heart, which is what Christ was trying to do. Because they can look at a story and they don't really realize they're learning something and it's about them. They think it's about this character, but it's really not. And so that's the magic of story. So with that class, one of the things was they were struggling so much with lying, and I don't even know if they knew a truth from a lie. It was really, really rough, and I had tried for months to get this to stop. And I'd been through the whole thing about what the Bible says about lies, and words are made for building up, and about truth, and how important it is to speak truth, and what's going to happen if you always are speaking lies. And anyway, so finally I thought, okay, I'm not going to, and it's not like I was going to come lecture them and then read a story, but I just thought I'm going to look for a story that might help them. And so I looked through Aesop to see if there was anything. I don't always agree with Aesop, but he was a Greek slave, so that's okay. But he has a lot of really great lessons in his stories, and I ran across this story about the woodman and Mercury, the god Mercury, and I thought, this I think might work. And so in the story of the woodman and Mercury, what happens is there's a poor woodman who's going into the woods to make his living, and he has this really old, worn axe. And so he's going to do his job, and along the way he stumbles, and his axe falls into this pond. And so he's at the side of the pond wondering what to do. This is his livelihood. He has no food, he has no money, and now he can't even chop a tree down to sell wood. And Mercury, the god of Mercury, appears. And Mercury asks him what's wrong. He said, I dropped my axe is in the pond. And so Mercury goes to the pond to get his axe, and Mercury reaches into the pond, and then he pulls out this beautiful golden axe. And so he says to the woodman, is this your axe? And so right then, we stop the story. And what I ask them is not what should he do, but what does he want to say? Because would he want that axe? Absolutely, that would solve a whole lot of problems, right? And here he is, and Mercury doesn't know what axe he had. So he could say it's his axe, but nobody would probably know. So we go through this whole thing about what do you think he wants to do, and they all understood right away. Well, he wants to say it's his axe, because they've all felt that. I want to say something that's not true because I want that thing. And so then we talked about, well, do you think that's what he's going to do? Is he going to say that's his axe? And they wrestle around for a while, and they argue with each other a little bit. And then I'll ask him what do you think he ought to do? What do you think would be right? Well, he shouldn't say it's his axe. Well, let's find out what he does. And so then, I keep reading. The woodman says, that is not my axe. And it's the relief on their faces when he says, that is not my axe. Well, then the great thing is in the story, they start rooting for this woodman because Mercury reaches into the pond again. This time he pulls out a silver axe, and it's like the temptations of Christ. Here we go. Here it comes again. Oh, we thought he'd mastered it, and now what does he want to say? And now we're back in the same boat. Well, maybe this one he could take, maybe it would be okay. And so we go through the whole thing, and but they're like, no. They want him to be honest, right? And so, sure enough, he says, that is not my axe. Happens again with a bronze axe. So we're going through this whole conversation again. But more and more, these kids are on board with the love of truth. And the beauty of the fact that he would say, that is not my axe. And so he again says, that is not my axe. And he pulls out, and this one is the woodman's axe. He says, that is my axe. And not only does he say that, but he's overjoyed to have it. So his heart, and we talk about his heart. And his heart was not begrudging in the fact that he did not have the gold or the silver or the bronze axe, but that he had his axe, because now he could make his living honestly, right? So anyway, so we're reading this story and going through, and then the woodman goes home. What happens is that the woodman, when he gets that axe, Mercury honors him for the fact that he was truthful, and he gives him 3 axes for being truthful, and the man is overjoyed, and he goes back to his home. Well, his neighbors hear that he has gotten these axes, and of course they want these axes, and they are not the best of characters, and so immediately we have a lot of ruffled feathers in kindergarten, because they're hatching a plan how they can get axes like he got axes. So they all take their axes and they go out and they throw them in the pond and then hide in the bushes waiting for Mercury to come, right? And so Mercury comes and he asks them, oh, what are you doing? We go through the whole thing. I lost my axe, I dropped it in there. And so he reaches in and he pulls out this gold axe, and the kids are just like in a frenzy about this. Like, he can't do it, they're gonna lie, and so anyway, so they do, they say, yes, that's my axe, and anyway, but Mercury basically gives them a tongue lashing, and then they love it because he takes the axe and he thumps them all on the head with it and sends them away, so they all get popped and then sent away. But the thing is with that group, doing that story, even though I'd spent months trying to teach them about the honor of speaking truth and about how we need to not lie, and what that does to God, and all of that. The story, then, what I was able to do with them is when I could catch them, and it didn't change right away, but when I caught them being truthful, I could say to them, I see the woodman in you. And then they started using it with each other pretty soon, where they were able to see that, and pretty soon they would quote that for themselves and say, I'm going to be like the woodman, and I'm going to tell the truth. And it was the power of story. The story reaches the heart. And that's one of the things I love about classical education is the richness of story and language in teaching the human soul, because we are all human and it speaks to us all in the same way. I feel like I've talked enough.
That's a kindergarten class that you have.
Yeah, it's kindergarten.
You wouldn't think that kids that age would catch on as quickly as they do.
They do. They amaze me every time. They do. So are there thoughts that you have, or questions, or even comments about what you've done that you found that's helpful in teaching these kiddos?
What curricular tools do you use?
What curriculum? Like all the way across the board?
Or just kind of, what are some of the curricular tools that you have found really helpful? And does each class, do you have one that's kind of used across the board with certain grade levels? How do you determine that?
And that's a good question. We talk about that a lot. Because there's kind of a mix, I would say. There are things that we've said that we're doing this, like, in kindergarten, all of us use a treasure tree program that we use, but the way that we're given freedom to do it in different ways. But we know where we're going. We know what things we want them to know. We know what ideas we want to talk about. We know what themes that we're doing. And so the other teachers may do that in a different way. And we're given that flexibility to be able to do that. So some things more than others, maybe. I don't know if I answered that question.
So in the city, I feel like the lack of access to the natural world is just one of 5,000 cards that are stacked against our kids. What other methods or emphasis have you seen in the school about creating access to the natural world for the student population? Access to that beauty that you're describing is so important to their formation. Have you seen that come out to play at the school?
It's a great question, because you're right. We try to do it in several ways. One of the things that we do with the field trips we do them very intentionally to get them into nature. And so whether we go to an arboretum, tomorrow we're going to the zoo, which has a conservatory as kind of part of it. But we try to, so part of it is going out. Part of it is bringing in, because there's a lot you can bring in. I'm a big fan of Charlotte Mason, and she's also one of bringing in a lot of nature into the classroom. So we bring in lots of bugs and things we find, and anything God's made we try to take a look at. One of the great things now is that with technology and with the internet, and we have screens and computers that I can pull up images at least and we can look at these images and wonder what it's like to be there, which is a lot more than we used to be able to do, holding a photo or just trying to describe to them what this place is like. And there are things like we've been studying the rainforest, and so I can put on all the rainforest noises while we're doing work so they can hear what it's like to actually be there. But it's not easy. I wish we could do it more, because I see the value in it, and I see how they react to it as well. It's just such a value.
Another way that Debbie's had influence over in being there a long time is we have a building that has a lot of places without windows, and there are think 4 places in the lower school that have spaces where a mural has been painted, and so all 4 of them are they're portions of kind of classic paintings that have their outdoor scenes, and so those are big on the walls, and that really adds a lot of warmth and coziness, and as well as kind of having that outdoor feeling. People come in and remark about the murals and how beautiful they are. So that's another thing that's even inside the building.
Thank you.
Garden. At our school we had a garden,
Yeah.
fruit garden or flower. That's something very tangible.
Yeah.
I've had a bird feeder attached to my window for a year, and that's been really fun to like lots of different kind of birds and stuff. And it's like kind of a way for them to see that.
That's a great idea.
Oh yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions or something else that you were wanting me to talk about more?
Can I have one question that has come up some in our school because we're trying to be more sensitive to cultural diversity in among our families. How much effort have you all been able to make, or do you see value in making? Because so much of the classical literature and the fairy tales are more centered around European culture, and so how do you address that? Or do you try to? Because the morals that you're describing that the children learn from Aesop's fable as well as Little Riding Hood they're universal themes.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's also one that we dialogue about kind of regularly, how to do that. I guess 2 things. The Treasures curriculum that we use, Treasures, there's an anthology of folk tales that comes with it that we do one each week, and that particular anthology does a great job. It's pulled from all over the world, so many of them are not ones that are the ones that we might know from Europe, but we also read the European ones, and it's interesting how we've had conversations because we will read an African folk tale, and we always are making connections, and they're like, Mrs. Harris, that's just like this story that we read over here, and we talk about, well, why would they have the same kind of story halfway around the world? Because of the same ideas that are true no matter where you are. So I think we're trying to find that balance. It's not an easy thing to do just because of the nature of the resources are more plentiful or more available maybe from the European stories, but I think more and more we're getting more access to things that are from a variety of cultures because I think that's really valuable for them, and I wouldn't want them just to hear from one Western perspective. Sure, it's the truth that we're trying to teach. So that's a work in progress. I think for us, we're trying to do.
And with art as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also, we've kind of just expanded our definition of what classical literature is, and that it includes timeless truths. So it's not necessarily just the European classics, it's other literature that includes timeless truths in it.
How do you, I mentioned to you before how important kindergarten is. How do you set the expectations for kids? Again, coming in, they're going to have expectations they've never had before, and just learning how to do school. Describe the first week or so of class briefly, other than chaotic. How do you make this process work? It's difficult enough, and in a not an at-risk area, but even more so in an urban at-risk school.
Yeah, there's probably a lot we could say about that. Part of it, I think, is the understanding that things aren't going to look good for a while, and being okay with that, and knowing, in kindergarten that all the curriculum that we have for the first about 6 weeks is all a negotiable thing, and that the curriculum we really have is teaching them how to be a student, how to be a student and how to be a student at Hope Academy, and kind of who God is. That's sort of our anchors as we're going. And I use story to do it. So we start out the first day with Morris the Moose Goes to School, and it takes us the day to read the book, but the great thing is that everything he does in school, and he does right, he does wrong, are all routines and lessons and things they need to learn. And usually the first day is pretty good because they're still a little bit like, what's going on here? And, so we establish as fast as we can on that first day of these are the routines we do, and we practice. And so each day we're going through more and more stories that help us apply then what we are to do. And we learn that if we don't do something right, we do it again, and it's okay to do it again, and it's part of working together as a group, working together as a team. And so we go back and we line up again, 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 and that's what we do. But it really feels like once we get to the point where, and it's all about building trust with me too, that I mean what I say, and this is how it works, and looks like we need to do that again, we're going to do it again, go back. Okay, maybe, but maybe not. We're going to go back, try again. And so we just kind of work our way through until they get to the point where they think, yeah, I probably know what's going to happen if I don't do this, or if I do this. And then I try to make the things that we do engaging so that they want to listen and want to learn, so they get in that habit of listening to me, so that then when I'm boring, that they will still listen to me, at least for a while. I teach them we have 5 rules in my kindergarten class, and I do a student-trained response with them. So I say, I will be, and they'll say, kinder today than yesterday. I'll say, we will. They'll say, love one another. I'll say, all tries. They'll say, are our best tries. Then I say, I will. They'll say, obey right away. We talk about personal responsibility. That's why it's an I will and not a we will. And then, for I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So I'll say, for I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So I use those rules as culture correctors before things go awry. And we talk about how those are God's rules. And so I'm subject to those rules just like them. They're not my rules, they're God's rules. I'm held accountable to them too, and so that's what I need to do. And so we work our way through slowly about what does that look like. Because a lot of them don't know what it looks like to be kind, or try to be kinder today than yesterday. Your standard is always trying to grow in Christ. So that we try to work through in that way to help them kind of bear some of that responsibility. And one of their favorite things to do is we play a compliment game, where I start and I give someone a compliment, and we get a high five, and then they have to choose another student and they give a compliment, and we have a sentence stem we use, and then they do it to them, and it has to travel all the way around to whomever they want until everybody has gotten one. They get so excited to encourage each other, so we try to practice using words rightly, and that helps us not use as many in the wrong way. So I don't know if that helps.
No, those are great things.
Those are some of the things we do. But it still looks, kind of like vegetable soup, and just, and we pray that we come out at the end of the day, and if we still count, we still got 16. We're good, and it's a blessing. So.
And then kind of on a bigger perspective, something we try to do with everybody, it gets trickier with the 4th and 5th graders, but to have the same standard of behavior in the hallway, so that when you go out into the hall, you know that it's going to be this kind of order in the hallway. And so for us, it's walking in lines with your hands behind your back is the highest standard of walking because otherwise hands are all over the place. So walking with hands behind the back.
Can I ask a question just because I'm just curious about how any other school does it? And I'm guilty of this more now than I used to be. But it used to be I was really strict even with myself. If I asked the children not to talk in the hallway, I didn't talk in the hallway. You know, that type of thing. If there was something I asked them to do, I did the same thing. Lately I've gotten just kind of sloppy with that with other teachers. You know, if they talk to me or something, I'll start talking. But we're talking when the speaker is talking and I've told them they have to pay attention. So do you have an opinion about whether the teacher should be held to the same standard as your students in terms of that kind of thing? I'm just curious. This is like an off-the-wall thing. It's just something that I've been convicted of lately.
I mean, I do, generally speaking, especially when I'm training them, I don't. Later we get into the, sometimes there are teacher talk times, but that doesn't mean it's a student talk time. And I will purposely talk with other teachers, and we will have talked about how the fact I'm going to be doing this, and I'm going to see, you know, if you remember that when teachers talk, your mouths are closed, and so I'll do that. So that because sometimes the only times you see people, then you have to communicate. But we talk about respect for the hallway, because it's respect for learning and respect for God, and so we want to keep it quiet so we can honor the learning. So I try to.
I just have to figure out some way of, because I just lately have been feeling kind of bad. Because when I was raising my own kids, when I told them they couldn't do something, I wouldn't do it either. So
our middle school and high school are on a different floor, and that's really good because they have a totally different expectation.
Yes,
for
it's
the
much
hallway.
more free.
right. Yeah, but that's hard for the little ones because we're in the same hallway.
We share the same building with them.
But we don't anymore.
Well, not anymore, but we share the same hallways because they're the
Well, in kindergarten, we have to make sure we're facing forward too, because you have all of these cement pillars in your hallways everywhere, and they're hard as a rock. And
Right, they have to watch where they're
running
going.
into them is
Well,
not good.
so many things happen when you're walking in the hallway.
I know, it's
It's amazing.
It is. Thank you.